Welcome to Get Naked with Dr. Kate. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Balistreri, a Beverly Hills-based psychologist, certified sex therapist, and the founder of Modern Intimacy. Thanks for joining me here where I talk about sex, relationships, mental health, and dive into your questions with practical answers and real solutions. Each week, I share insights aimed at helping you build an authentic and healthy relationship with yourself, with others, and with your sexuality. It's time to get naked, emotionally, mentally, and on your own time, physically. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I'm so excited to have on the pod Courtney Virden. She is a good friend and a pelvic floor expert, fitness trainer, and the founder of iCore Method. The iCore Method app with core and pelvic floor programs is used by women and people in female bodies worldwide to restore pelvic floor health and wellness. Courtney is a regular contributor to Kourtney Kardashian's Poosh platform and consults as a pelvic floor expert for many publications and outlets. Courtney, thanks so much for being here today. I'm so excited to speak with you.
Same. Thank you so much for having me, Kate.
Of course. We've been working adjacent to each other now for several years, and I've always been so fascinated by your work and the role that the pelvic floor plays in sexual pleasure. So let's talk a little bit about it. What's the deal with the pelvic floor and why should people care about?
So the pelvic floor is the base of our core, and in women and female bodies, it is 14 muscles. It's people think they want a tight vagina, right? Like so many people think I want a tight vagina for sex because the pelvic floor surrounds our vagina. So the feeling of tightness during intercourse is actually tone in the pelvic floor. And then when we orgasm, it's a rhythmic contraction of the pelvic floor. So if our pelvic floor is really tight and rigid, we're not going to have as much relaxing. Does that make sense? So then the orgasm's not going to be as strong. We're not going to be able to relax. So sometimes we have an inability to orgasm even, and then low sensation in the pelvic floor. It could be from nerves entrapped in the fascia. And sometimes penetration can be painful too if our pelvic floor is really tight and rigid, or if the pelvic floor is just really overstretched. It's not able to really get tone. So you might feel really loose. I hate to use that term, but that's just a very common used term down there. And then orgasming can be difficult as well, and just low sensation intercourse. So it definitely affects, orgasms and climaxing, but also just, sexual sensation and how much feeling that we get down there. And then confidence on top of it, is a huge thing when it comes to the pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor and sex are completely related and enjoyment.
So how would someone know if their pelvic floor is hypertonic or hypotonic?
That is a great question. So sometimes someone is actually symptomless, but the most common symptoms, say, of a hypertonic, that's too tight and rigid pelvic floor, would be painful intercourse, low back pain, constipation, and actually incontinence, which most people who have that incontinence in the bladder leakage think their pelvic floor is hypotonic. And it's you could have either. And then if your pelvic floor is more hypotonic and overstretched, that's where we get that pelvic organ prolapse, where the vagina, the rectum, the uterus, those organs start falling and can even protrude through the opening. You can have the bowel leakage. You might also have back pain, hip pain, poor posture with both of them, low sensation sex with both, trouble orgasming, hip pain, pelvic pain. There's just a lot that goes in with it that people don't realize. A chiropractor actually recently told me everyone in his practice with low back pain has some sort of pelvic floor dysfunction.
Oh, interesting. So pelvic floor dysfunction is not necessarily limited to people in female bodies. People born in male bodies can also experience it?
Absolutely. And male or people born in male bodies will often have maybe the back pain or erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation. Things such as that are very, very common for them.
So interesting. So how does someone start to heal from any sort of pelvic floor dysfunction? What's the first step that they should consider?
So you can go see a pelvic floor therapist, like an in-person therapist. Sometimes they'll do an internal evaluation, and some people want to do Kegels, which are tight concentric contractions. They think they should be. It's most people tell me that I'm not doing my Kegels, and I actually don't love that. I'll get into that in a minute. But then I have a lot of people who do my app from all over the world and don't ever see a therapist and doctor and don't need to, and are able to heal themselves with restorative exercises. So that's, my programs are very much sequenced in a way to, no matter if you're too tight, overstretched, or a combination, we're going to tackle that all. We're going to really lengthen the pelvic floor and utilize concentric and eccentric contractions in all planes of movement, which is very, very important. That's why I don't recommend Kegels. They can be appropriate for some people with a really low tone pelvic floor, but it's just concentric. We're not eccentrically contracting, which is equally important. And it doesn't work in all planes of motion. So say someone does that and they are kind of overstretched, don't have any tone or enough tension. They do them. They're not going to an internal therapist, so they don't really know how to measure the tone of the pelvic floor. And now what we fixed, when does it become too much? And now we have too much tension there because we've done too many of them. And that's why I just think there's better ways, such as our programs and other things you can do to really restore, tone and tension and strengthen the pelvic floor. Because even if the pelvic floor is tight, it's weak. Tight is not strong. It's just weak and dysfunctional. So, you can see a doctor, or our programs are a really simple way for people who either can't afford to see a doctor, don't have one in their location, or are embarrassed. So many people don't want to be talking to people about their dysfunction and the symptoms. It's really nothing to be embarrassed about, but that's just the way it is. So many people are embarrassed or have shame surrounding it. And there's so much you can do on your own at home with really little time. And it's so powerful to have resources to heal yourself. So there's many things you can do to really help restore proper function there. And while, we're talking about sexual function and pleasure and how it absolutely is tied to the pelvic floor, and you can have better sex than you ever imagined. I'm talking just like more sensation, better orgasms, multiple orgasms. I mean, so much is possible, but it really impacts so many people's daily lives, right? So even in terms of the sexual part, if we're in a relationship and say intercourse is painful, or we're ejaculating prematurely, or, unable to have an erection, those things impact our relationship greatly, which mentally and emotionally really impacts us. And then other things such as the bladder leakage, bowel leakage. I mean, I've worked with a girl, she was about 30 after her baby, walking up the stairs, she'd have bowel leakage, and most people don't want to talk to a doctor about that. And all of those things just impact us so greatly in our daily life. If you have to plan your day around using the bathroom, or you can't jump on a trampoline with your kids because you're going to leak urine, or your back is hurting so bad. I mean, these are things we don't have to live with. And we most of the time don't need surgery. And then when we go to, after a baby, we go for a 6-week checkup. Typically they'll check, make sure, like if you had stitches, that they're healed, make sure, basically it's like, are you okay to have sex again? Very few in the United States, at least. There are some other countries that pelvic floor therapy is a standard of care. And here in the United States, it's such a disservice that it's not, because they're not checking people for diastasis recti. Do we have the separated abdominals, which leads to a belly pooch, which aesthetically women don't like, but actually from a functional standpoint, it's dysfunctional and creates so many other issues. And for me, that's why it should be addressed. And then they're not also checking, do you have pelvic floor dysfunction? I have a top fertility OBGYN doctor who has told me they hate asking, do you have bladder leakage? They don't know what to do. And so many people want a quick fix. So they'll get a mesh sling, or like lasers that like tighten down there. But again, we don't want to be tight. Another top OBGYN here has reached out to me before because she does lasers. It makes her a ton of money, but she knows it's not a solution because we're really not addressing the root problem, which is a dysfunction, improper tone and tension within the pelvic floor. And that's really like exercises and fascial work and things to restore proper tone and tension.
Oh, interesting. So I remember a couple of years ago, you said something to the effect of incontinence after pregnancy is common, but it's not normal. And so I think a lot of folks who have had children do expect that that's just the new normal. So let's talk a little bit about why you're saying this is not what people should expect and have to tolerate.
Yeah. So I think we are people like, that's just the way it is, right? And I actually had bladder leakage after my babies. I gained over 70 pounds with my first and 60 with my second, and I stopped weighing myself. So I probably did gain more than that. And I had a huge diastasis recti, which is that separated abdominal. So I looked pregnant even when I wasn't. And I had bladder leakage. I remember walking into Target by those, big balls outside and sneezing and peeing and thought, oh my gosh, I have to fix this. This is not a way to live. But so many people think that's normal, and I had this sexual dysfunction and back pain and poor posture, and all that leads to low confidence, So what I mean by it's common but not normal, our bodies are not designed to leak urine or feces, right? Our bodies are not designed. That's not normal. Now, if you have it, it's very, very common, right? And there's a dysfunction happening. So I'm always like, inside out, like, restore health and wellness from the inside. You're going to look and feel better. So I like the most holistic approach. And if that doesn't work, let's move to something else and exhaust the possibilities before you turn to surgery, which can cause other issues for people. Right? Mm-hmm. And let's actually get to the root of the problem, because say you get a bladder sling, right? That now we're cutting into the fascia, into the tissue. Now we're creating more dysfunction there. So while the symptom of bladder leakage might be gone, now we have more fascial adhesions. The muscle tone is still inappropriate, whether it was too tight or overstretched. That didn't go away because we didn't address that.
How long does it take to start seeing a difference with some of the therapy exercises that you walk people through?
That is such a great question. So I've had people as little as 4 videos have their bladder leakage completely gone. And then for some women, it could take months, men as well. It depends on, some of it is age, how responsive our tissue is, how much internal inflammation we have, how consistent we are, if there's underlying conditions. But most people within 2 to 3 months, even 1 to 3 months, I should say, will have a noticeable to significant improvement. And many will have a complete rectification of symptoms. I feel like within 3 to 4 months, if you're really not seeing a difference, that's when you really need to go back to your doctor and be like, hey, I have been really consistent with pelvic floor therapy. I've been doing all of the right things and my body is not responding. What's next, right? But let's give ourselves an opportunity to heal first, because most people don't need to see a doctor and don't need surgery. And that's why actually that challenge I have coming up with Ashley Black, we did 90 days, is because we talked about 60, but some people need that extra 30 days to really see results. And I don't want people to come away from it feeling that pelvic floor therapy doesn't work, because it absolutely works. And even in the rare people and the few people that will end up needing surgery, if you do end up needing to go that route, you've at least restored a much better function within the pelvic floor and body, because the pelvic floor is the base of our core. And so when you think about like a movement, the core initiates everything. If we have dysfunction in the pelvic floor, we're going to be dysfunctional throughout our body and have improper movement patterns. So just restoring that from a functional standpoint and corrective mobility and a good gait, proper posture, it's imperative that we train our pelvic floor. And it isn't just something you do until symptoms go away. it's really something that we should be doing our whole lives.
What are some of the other causes outside of pregnancy and childbirth that can lead to pelvic floor dysfunction?
That is a great question. Pregnancy is definitely the number one risk factor. Obesity as well, just like that diastasis recti as well, the separated abs, you can get that from obesity or extreme heavy lifting. Sometimes when people do a lot of like crunches and sit-ups and their abdominals are really, really tight and rigid, it can lead to pelvic floor issues. Even like footwear, people think, feet. But our movement starts with our feet. So if we have like over gripping, say from wearing thongs or something that causes the plantar to really overgrip and tightens that whole fascial line, or a lot of high heels, that can eventually create dysfunction in the pelvic floor. So like improper movement patterns, trauma, surgery to the pelvic floor. So C-sections, hysterectomies, really any abdominal surgery,
Wow.
and then trauma, even car accidents can impact our pelvic floor.
How so?
So I actually experienced that myself a few years ago. I was rear-ended, and with whiplash, it can affect the vagus nerve, which is tied to our pelvic floor. So I started having a lot of like dull pain in the pelvic floor after whiplash. So people always think after car accidents, even a lot of therapists, you go in for one thing and they focus on that one part. And restoring, let's fix your neck, right? Your neck is hurting after a car accident. Let's fix your neck without like, okay, well, let's see, did that impact the whole chain, and what below it maybe was impacted that we need to address a little bit too. So
Wow.
I think that's where too, I love like really being able to put together programs that really help restore not just pelvic floor function, but the body and how we move. My programs are really full body to restore proper movement. So, if the pelvic floor is caused from something else, or you're moving differently, and now, the poor posture up above is impacting the pelvic floor because our breathing even impacts the pelvic floor. Let's address it all and really get your body moving well, because when we move well, we really feel well.
That's so true. And I'm really fascinated by what you just said about the vagus nerve being connected to the pelvic floor. And what immediately comes up for me is how anxiety, or perhaps being stuck in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, of course, is connected to our vagus nerve. And how might some of the emotional or psychological things that we are going through, how can that be communicated to the pelvic floor and be really connected with any kind of distress during sex and pain during sex? It feels like an important connecting point.
It is. And we actually store a lot of trauma in our pelvic floor and our fascia. So, all of those things, especially people have been through, abuse or rape or sexual trauma. Often I completely understand. We try to shut off that connection because we just don't want to feel anymore. So what I love about my programs and pelvic floor work is you really focus on it anatomically. It's not like you're doing the workouts like, oh, give me more sensation. It's really like envisioning the lengthening and rebounding of the pelvic floor, noticing how the rest of your body responds, and really reconnecting and opening the nerve pathways, which the fascia is an important part of that as well, because sometimes they're blocked. And then people do sometimes I've had people cry when doing them, or they feel like stress or anxious because those emotions will come up when they're like tapping into that, because our body remembers that. And it's important for those people to know that that is okay and normal. If you're seeing a therapist, definitely talk with them. If you need therapy, reach out. Or if it's something that just this one exercise is causing me so much anxiety, it's okay to skip that one for now. Or if it's too much, skip ahead and do something different, because that can be a lot to deal with.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think there's so much wisdom in our bodies, and our bodies do store a tremendous amount of emotion. And sometimes just bringing our awareness to different parts of the body that we've not been consciously connected to in a long time can evoke big memories and releases that can feel cathartic, but also can feel really overwhelming. I remember when you showed me a few of the exercises a few years ago, and I was so surprised by the subtlety and nuance of the exercises. I didn't expect to feel anything. Right?
Yeah.
At the time, I was very consistent in my gym routine. And I thought, oh, these exercises just don't look like they're going to do much for me, right? Because I put my body through a lot at the gym. And I was so surprised at the intensity of the subtle sensations that I was feeling in parts of my body that I really didn't have much connection to or awareness of outside of penetration. And I was blown away by how powerful these exercises were. You said earlier you used two terms. You said concentric and eccentric exercises. Can you explain what those are and why they're important in this work?
Absolutely. And you were kind of experiencing that. So actually some of the most fit people are the ones who are surprised that it works, but you really need the instructions to do it. So you know like what you're doing and how to tap into that because they work and they're way more intense. It's really deep core work. So concentric is that tightening or shortening contraction. So it's easiest to think of it like from a bicep curl, for instance. If I'm going to curl, right, and contract the bicep, it's concentric, it's shortening, right? And then the eccentric is the lengthening and stretching of it. So that's, and again, with the Kegels, like if we're only doing the concentric portion of a bicep curl and never eccentrically loading and lengthening, that bicep is going to become crazy tight and that is dysfunctional. And that's really how the pelvic floor works too. So the eccentric is that like lengthening and stretching, and the concentric is that shortening and contracting. The eccentric is also, strengthening. So you want strength, as it contracts and strength as it relaxes. And that's again with orgasms when we're talking about, female bodies, that it's, a rhythmic contraction. So the more our pelvic floor has strength as it contracts and the ability to relax and lengthen, the stronger our orgasms get because so many people are really tight in the pelvic floor, and really rigid. So they might have symptoms. They might not even have symptoms, but tight is very dysfunctional, and sitting is horrible for our pelvic floor. And I think most of us, I sit too much. I'm on the computer a lot. Working, and I know you're sitting a lot, and most of us are. We're driving. It's horrible for our pelvic floor. So it's just one of those things. We need to be doing these exercises to just kind of reset for daily life and the dysfunction our daily life causes.
Yeah, I think it's important to consider our bodies so holistically, and it's also hard to do that all the time, right? As you said, we're busy driving, sitting, working, doing all the things that we do. And that's a part of our body that doesn't really carry a tremendous amount of sensation. So it's easy to not be present with it until we notice that something doesn't feel right. Courtney, you have a program that's coming out. You mentioned it a few minutes ago in tandem with Ashley Black, and you're doing a 90-day challenge. Can you talk a little bit about why people might want to do it, what they can expect, and just a little bit more info?
Yes, I would love to. I have my monthly programs or annual programs, but then Ashley Black and I have teamed up and we have a 90-day pelvic floor challenge that starts September 1st. And it's how to fascia blast for the pelvic floor, which earlier we were talking about fascia and adhesions and, fascia blasting. I do myself. I love it. Gets rid of pain, restores movement. It's amazing. And then the pelvic floor exercises are restorative. So we're really merging those two modalities and addressing pelvic floor from both angles. And we are so excited about this because I know the fascia blasters work and I know my pelvic floor programs work, and the marriage of them together is so exciting. And we have a private Facebook group for support. I'll be doing weekly lives in there, getting to know everyone. They can ask questions. We have a ton of giveaways. Every week they get their schedule of like fascia blasting and exercises. And it's quick. It's like 15 to 20 minutes a day between the fascia blasting and workouts. I mean, it's very fast.
Wow.
If you want to spend 25, 30, that's great. But it's very quick to do. There's so many resources, meal plans, and then you've got Ashley and myself, so 2 experts, and it's going to be so fun. I'm so excited about it. It's just an amazing opportunity for people to restore the pelvic floor, and then to be able to have that one-on-one with people and a private group for support and motivation. And we're going to do a lot of education, Kate. So everyone is really going to be educated on the pelvic floor. The lives you can come to or not, we're going to post them after that. And it's all up on my app. So
Wow.
You just download the app. You can get anything you want from the app. And it's awesome. I'm so excited about it.
I'm excited for you and for anyone who participates. I think 90 days is a really reasonable commitment to your body. And I think at the end of it, can people expect to see a difference in their orgasm potential?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why we did the 90 days. I thought, should we do 30, 60? Because so many people within 30, 60 days notice a huge improvement.
Wow.
But like I said, some people need a little bit longer. So we really wanted to make sure that people understand you can completely transform your pelvic floor. So within the 90 days, I mean, there is so much to expect. And then it will change your life in ways you didn't even know is possible. And you can join the challenge later too. So if someone is hearing this and we're a month into the challenge or even 2 months, you still have 30 to 60 days or whatever that is to join us and really do the work that's like so transformative. Ashley and I both have people all throughout the world. I feel like to be able to have a place that you will get your questions answered. And if you want it private, it can be private. But then for people to realize, oh my gosh, somebody else is experiencing that too. It's very valuable. You don't feel so alone. So there's a lot of connection and just, it's just going to be so much fun.
I love this. I love it so much. What if someone's not able to commit to 90 days? Do you have other programs in the app that are quicker or more a la carte?
Yes. So the 90-day challenge is coming up. It's, like I said, September 1st through the end of November, basically. And then I have other programs as well that are either month-to-month or annual subscriptions. And it's all for the same price as your streaming service. I really wanted to make pelvic floor work affordable. And pelvic floor programs are not affordable sometimes for everyone. So I wanted to price it in a way that was very affordable. So it's month to month. The most expensive month to month is $14.99 a month, and you can cancel anytime. And we have a restore program, and that is where that's $12.99, or advanced restore, like if you have dysfunction or you just feel weak or you want more stability. And it's also designed a 70-year-old could come in and do it, or someone who has poor instability. We have prenatal programs, and then the all access is what is $14.99, and that's access to all the programs besides the challenge. And then every month we're uploading new content. So you might get more guides. There's a really exciting guide I'm excited about next month I'm going to drop. And then we're going to be adding other workouts in as well. So there's going to be more pelvic floor, but we're going to do more postural workouts, more foot-based, maybe full body pelvic floor. So there's going to be a lot that's added. And then you just get access to everything in that program as it's added for the same price.
What about for folks who maybe have some limitations in their mobility? How can your program be adapted?
So there's modifications for a lot. So I shot them very differently because I had programs before. It was actually my mom who's going to kill me, but she's over like 70. And she's like, what about older people? And I do want, if someone can't lay on their back at all, even with propped up pillows, my program's probably not for you because some of the exercises I do have you lay on your back. But you can put pillows up behind your back. A lot of like a modification in the prenatal programs, right? Because I experienced that. I couldn't lay flat on my back. It was just compressing and I felt horribly nauseous and sick. There's a lot of modifications. And the first program is like beginner one. That is for someone who maybe has poor instability, who's fearful of the ball, or needs a lot of modifications. And then each exercise workout, the new workout is like beginner 2. It's a progression from that. There's no time frame to move up. I love as perfect form as possible. So I'm really going for like precision here, right? We're reprogramming our nervous system and our body to move properly. So I don't want like sloppy form and just like, I need to do an advanced workout. There's no need. I can do the beginner program and have a great workout from it. Anybody can. And I talk about you're sitting on a ball. If you feel unstable or you want more security, place your hand on a stable object. So I coach more people through, and I love questions. I'm always happy to provide, like email me, DM me. I'm always going to respond. If you need additional help or tips, I will give it to you. I want people to succeed, but they're really designed in a way where even if you didn't reach out, you will have success for this. They're very, very safe to do.
Okay, great. Where can people find you? Your app is iCore Method, right?
Yes. So is it iCore Method? We're up in the Apple Store and Google Play Store. iCoreMethod.com. There's all of it is there. And then you can even go to pelvicfloorchallenge.com to register for the Pelvic Floor Challenge or sign up to get more information there.
Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to do it. I want to really try this. And
you're going to do the challenge?
I'm going to think about it. I have to make sure I have the time to commit to it, but I am going to try to squeak this in because I think 90 days is such an interesting amount of time to really think about being present in your body and to really think about investing in your sexual pleasure and sexual power, even if you're not noticing any dysfunction symptoms. So, yeah,
I feel like when people say my sex is already good, I'm like, is sex ever too good? I just don't think that's such a thing. But my sex is too good. I've got to like tone it down a little, right? Like I feel like, I didn't realize I could have internal orgasms so easily until I started doing so much pelvic floor work. And I'm like, whoa, not only can I have them, which I'd never had before, but I can have as many as I want to, and
wow.
That is possible for a lot of women, maybe not all, but a lot. They just don't realize it and they don't know how to tap into that, and their pelvic floor is not turned on. It might not be strong enough, the sensation, but even just more pleasure, right? Like sex is for not our partner. I mean, we want a connection if we are having, partner sex, but for us, like what is our pleasure? Owning our pleasure and worrying less about are they receiving pleasure from this and making sure that we're getting maximum pleasure. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And that's what I love about the pelvic floor, the like confidence it gives you, even like being on top. So many women feel vulnerable in that position. And it is a place of vulnerability, right? I can understand so many reasons, but the more you become comfortable like with the pelvic floor and in tune, I love people saying, I'm not nervous anymore. I tried what you said. I even have some articles about sex positions on the stability ball because that's a lot of fun for people who want to try that. And then, the easiest position to orgasm in.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Courtney. I really appreciate this conversation. And I'll put all of the links to everything in our show notes. So for anyone who's interested in joining the challenge or wants to get more information on at-home pelvic floor exercises that you can do, Courtney is amazing.
Thank you. And yeah, they can follow us on social media just to kind of see what we're about. It's at iCore Method across the platforms. And thank you for asking me to be on today. I was so honored. And, I always learn so much from you every time we talk. I have the best conversations. So this was so fun for me.
This was so great. Thank you too. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Get Naked with Dr. Kate. Stay connected with me on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. Kate Balistreri. Everyone has questions, and I want to answer as many as I can. So feel free to email your questions to question@getnakedpodcast.com. If you're looking for a free 30-minute consultation with me or someone on my team, visit modernintimacy.com. And don't forget to join our newsletter, Modern Intimacy, on Substack. Let's meet back here next week. A new episode drops every Tuesday. Disclaimer, this podcast is not a substitute for therapy and does not constitute a professional relationship with Dr. Kate Balistreri or Modern Intimacy. This podcast is strictly for education and entertainment purposes only.